On the second floor of the hotel, Supervisor Bob Vinson was on the night shift. Suddenly, he noticed a strange-looking machine in the corridor that hadn't been there just a little while ago. This floor of the hotel was dedicated to employees. At this late hour, seeing such a bizarre machine here made the supervisor feel that something was wrong. It was a metallic box with a smaller box connected on top, and the front part looked like a strange control panel. The control panel had a total of 28 switches, each numbered. All the switches were flipped down except for switch number 23. At this moment, it was 6:30 in the morning, and this incident took place at Harvey's Lake Tahoe Hotel and Casino in Nevada, which was about to become national news headlines within the next 24 hours. For Bob Vinson, the strange machine wasn't the only surprising thing. He had been on duty almost the entire night, but he hadn't heard any sound of a machine being placed in the corridor. Whoever had left this machine here had set it on 4 wooden blocks. These blocks were pressed deep into the corridor's carpet, indicating that the machine was very heavy. What made the incident even stranger was that the locks on the doors near where the machine was placed had been rendered useless with super glue. While Bob Vinson was still trying to figure things out, he found an unknown casino and hotel in the American state of Nevada. At the time we're talking about, it was an 11-story building with 197 rooms. When Bob Vinson, who was on the second floor, found the envelope, he ran to call security. Later, the police and fire department were also called in. At first, no one dared to pick up the envelope because everyone suspected it might be a trap. Eventually, after nudging it with a broom to make sure it was safe, they opened it. Inside the envelope was a 3-page document, typed on a typewriter. At the very top, a headline read, "Warning for Hotel Management and Bomb Squad." Below the headline, it said not to try to move the bomb because it contained a mechanism that would detonate it within milliseconds if it was even slightly disturbed. It also warned not to try pouring water or gas on it, as there were float switches inside. If that was done, the air pressure inside the machine would increase, and it would explode in that situation as well. The screws on top of the machine were also connected to the trigger, so if they were turned even 25%, it would still explode. In simple words, the bomb was so sensitive that even the slightest movement could detonate it, at least according to what was written in the letter. At that time, 600 guests were sleeping in their rooms in the hotel. The police first evacuated the hotel and told everyone to go to the parking lot. Then the bomb squad was called and they first carefully inspected the machine. It was a box made of about half-inch steel sheets, welded together very neatly. Even the places where there were some marks had been smoothed out with car body filler. There were bubble levels on all 4 sides of the box, probably installed to keep the machine perfectly level. All these things suggested that what was written in the letter might actually be true. The letter further stated that the bomb could not be disarmed in any way, not even by the person who made it. It had automatic timers that would detonate it on their own within the next 24 hours. The only way to move it to a safe place was if management followed the instructions written in the letter. Law enforcement agencies and the bomb squad, realizing the seriousness of the situation, didn't take any steps that might risk detonating the bomb. First, they tried to find any fingerprints on the box, but found nothing. Then they took photos from all angles and used a special X-ray machine to scan it to determine if there was actually something inside or if it was just a hoax. While the X-rays were being developed, they placed a stethoscope on the box and listened carefully. There was definitely something inside making a sound. Something inside the box was moving continuously. The letter claimed that there was TNT inside the box, but how much? The letter hinted that if the bomb exploded, even the casino across the road would suffer significant damage, and it included these words, which translate to, It is advised that people be kept at least 100 feet away from the bomb. Police officers also evacuated nearby buildings. The hotel's gas pipeline was shut off, and casino employees began moving millions of dollars in cash elsewhere. FBI agents also arrived on the scene and set up a command and control center in a nearby building for the operation. The faces of the police and law enforcement agencies made it clear that the situation was even more serious than it appeared. But what exactly were the demands of the person who had placed the bomb here? The letter stated that they wanted $3 million in cash, but the condition was that the money had to be in used $100 bills. There should be no markings of any kind on them, and the bills should not be treated with any chemicals. It also said that if there was any attempt at trickery, the method to defuse the bomb would not be revealed. And if the demand was not met within 24 hours, the automatic timers would detonate the bomb on their own. But who exactly was supposed to receive this money, and how? When the developed X-ray film came back from the lab, the blurry black and white image at least partially supported the claims made in the threatening letter. The small control box mounted on top of the machine was shown in the X-ray to actually have a wire connected to its screw, just as mentioned in the letter. There was a straight tube inside the box, which might have been a tilt sensor, and a float valve was also clearly visible. Besides that, the lower box was filled with various cylinders. At that time, the police had no idea what these cylinders were for. One thing was certain: the person who wrote the letter was not pulling a prank. This machine was indeed a bomb. Slowly, the 24-hour deadline was running out, so the authorities decided to agree to the ransom. The 3-page letter also included information about how the money was to be delivered. The money would be delivered by helicopter. Instructions for the pilot were written, stating that he should land near the LTA building at Lake Tahoe Airport at 11 p.m., and the helicopter should be facing south. After landing, the pilot was to stand near the fence, where he would receive a call with further instructions. Remember, only the pilot was to be in the helicopter, no gunman, no one else. To carry out this task, an agent named Joe Cook started up the FBI helicopter. $3 million in cash was placed in the helicopter, but all the bills were fake, and a gunman was hidden behind the pilot's seat. The gunman was instructed that no matter what happened, he had to protect the FBI agent. At exactly 11 p.m., the FBI agent landed at the designated spot and stood by the fence. Soon after, the phone booth near the fence rang. The agent picked up the phone, and a man on the other end said there was a letter under the table in the phone booth. He should pick it up and read it. Whoever was on the other end was very clever. He didn't want to stay on the public phone for more than 5 seconds, because the longer the call, the higher the chances of it being traced. This new letter was addressed to the pilot. It said that first he should go to the helicopter and use a flashlight to show every corner of the helicopter. Don't forget, we're watching you. Then he was to take off and head toward Highway 50. Exactly 15 minutes later, he would see a strobe light in the forest on his right-hand side. He was to land near the strobe light, facing south. There, he would find another letter hanging from a tree. The pilot did exactly as instructed. He cleverly lit up the cockpit so the gunman wouldn't be visible and took off, heading to the point where he was supposed to see the strobe light. When he arrived at the location, he couldn't see any strobe light anywhere. For the next hour, he circled the area, but in the dark night, there was no movement in the forest. So, he returned to the airport and landed. Later, they found out that he hadn't read the instructions correctly, and the place he was supposed to go was actually miles away. To send a message to the person giving the instructions, a news report was aired on TV saying there was some confusion about the location in the instructions. When the mastermind behind the plan found out that the police were still willing to deliver the money, he called the police station and said, flip switch number 5 up on the machine at Harvey's hotel, and wait for the next phone call. Maybe he wanted to buy some time to come up with a new plan. That's why he told them to flip the dummy switch, but by then it was too late. It was now 6:40 a.m. The bomb had been in the hotel for more than 24 hours, but even after the deadline had passed, it hadn't exploded. That was a positive sign. Meanwhile, at the command and control center, the teams from the FBI, police, bomb squad, and fire department estimated that the box could contain at most 1 or 2 pounds of TNT. They calculated that if it exploded in the hotel, the building's pillars wouldn't be damaged. At most, the interior of the floor would be affected. So they fitted a small bomb next to the main bomb connected to a control box. The plan was that when the plastic bomb went off, it would disable the control box, and maybe the TNT wouldn't detonate. All preparations were complete. The surrounding buildings were evacuated, and they got ready to detonate the bomb. It was 3:45 p.m. on August 27th. A crowd stood a kilometer away, watching the scene, and news outlets were recording it. Then came the call, "Fire in the hole," and the remote control button was pressed. The machine in the corridor detonated from the shock, and the bomb exploded. But as the letter had said, it didn't contain TNT. Later, it was discovered that it was filled with dynamite, which produces a much smaller explosion compared to TNT. But in the end, who was the person who planted this bomb? The investigation revealed that the person who planted the bomb at Harvey's Hotel and Casino was a 58-year-old man named John Burgess, and both of his sons had helped him with the job. He had lost his entire life savings at this very casino, and that's when he cleverly came up with this whole plan to extort money from the hotel owner. Later, it was discovered that John Burgess's plan was actually to steal the helicopter along with the cash. If the pilot had reached the correct location and gone into the forest to look for the new envelope, John Burgess's sons would have taken off with the helicopter to a spot where they had already parked their car. John Burgess was sentenced to 20 years in prison, while his sons were pardoned in exchange for cooperating with the police. In 1996, John Burgess died of liver cancer. After this incident, the hotel owner renovated Harvey's Hotel and relaunched it with a new design and more rooms. We hope you'll like and share this video from Gem TV as much as always. Thank you so much for your loving comments. See you in the next amazing video.